So this is lesson 9.5, and it'll probably be A. Multiplication and division of radical expressions, intermediate algebra. Alright, so we're going to learn how to multiply radicals. Really not too hard to multiply. Multiply has always been kind of the easy thing when you deal with any weird stuff in math. So when we have something like that, when you multiply those, you multiply the numbers outside the radical, then you multiply the numbers inside the radical, and you're done. Okay, that was really hard. Alright, it gets a little bit trickier when the answer here can be simplified, because then you have to simplify that, but we'll get into some of those. Alright, so let's look at that second example. We've got some distributing, but it doesn't really make it any harder. We've got the square root of 3, and we're multiplying that by 2 square root of 6 minus 5 square root of 12. Alright, you got a couple different options here. It's kind of up to you. That can't be reduced, that can't be reduced, but that can be. That could be reduced to just the square root of 12, 2 square root of 3. And then you've got the 5, so that's 10 square root of 3 right there, if you were to reduce that. But let's do it without reducing, just to see what kind of difference there is. Okay, so using distributive, multiply those. And we get 2 square root of 18 minus, multiply that times that, 5 square root of 36. Alright, square root of 18, we can break that down into 9 times 2. I can take the square root of that, so I've got square root of 9 times 2, which gives me the square root of 9 is 3, so I bring the 3 out, and square root of 2 is left in there. So I have 6 square root of 2 instead of this here, minus square root of 36 is 6, so 6 times 5 is 30. And that ends up being your final answer there. Okay, let's keep going in example 3. Square root of 3 plus the square root of 5. And that's times 4 square root of 3 minus square root of 5. Alright, so we've got two binomials there. We're going to do the FOIL method. So let's go ahead and write this out. Square root of 3 times 4 square root of 3. That's my f. Minus the square root of 3 square root of 5. Those are my outside ones. Plus square root of 5 times 4 square root of 3. Inside ones, minus the square root, of 5 times the square root of 5, and that's my L. Okay, so I did all 4 parts, so let's go ahead and put stuff together. So right there, 4 square root of 9. Number outside, this times this gives me square root of 9. Minus the square root of 15. Plus 4 square root of 15 minus the square root of 25. Now let's see if we can start combining. Square root of 9 is 3, so 3 times 4 is 12. Minus the square root of 15 plus would give me a plus 3 square root of 15, because this is a negative 1. Negative 1 plus 4 is positive 3. Square root of 25 is 5. 12 minus 5 is 7, so I have 3 square root of 15 plus 7, or 7 plus 3 square root of 15. Alright, let's look at example number 4. And we have the square root of 3 plus 3, and they're squaring the quantity. Again, that means the exact same thing as doing the FOIL method. Okay, so the first would be outside inside, and last. Alright, we can combine those. And we have square root of 9 there, so that's 3. So 12 plus 6 square root of 3. So that is supposed to be example 4, but I did it differently. So let's go ahead and actually do it. I put a different number. I put the square root of 3 in there instead of an x, but either way, you got some practice looking at that one. So this is square root of x plus 3. Okay, first thing is square root of x times square root of x. The outside would be 3 square root of x. Inside would be 3 square root of x. And last would be 9. Square root of x times square root of x is the square root of x squared, which is just x. Add these together. So remember, when you multiply radicals, you multiply the numbers that are outside and then you multiply the numbers that are inside. But when you add, which is what we're doing now, you just add the outside numbers and you tag along whatever the common radical is that you're going to drag along, and that's what you get there. So, example number 5. So the book gives you another method to do this than what I'm going to teach, and the reason I'm not teaching the way the book is because there are so many things to remember that is just one more, and if you just do the FOIL method, it may take you another step, but at least you don't have to worry about messing it up. You can remember all of the stuff that you need to in order to make this happen. Okay, so outside would be so you have to take that negative with it. Okay, inside negative 2. And last. Alright, so let's start combining here. 9 square root of x times the square root of x is just x. So anytime you take a radical and you square it or multiply it by itself, the radical sign, everything just comes off and it just becomes the x. Okay, let's look at this. Notice how I put the x and y together. And then the next one is going to be negative 2 times 3 is negative 6. And then this will be plus 4, and then the y times the y is y squared, and we can take it off because of the radical. And we end up with that. So we combine those. And we are done with example number 5. Okay, example 6 is a little tricky because you need to remember that this is one part and this is the other. So if you're going to use the FOIL method, okay, so this is and this and this and this. So we're going to take this whole thing times this whole thing. That's our first. So that's my F for FOIL. My outside is going to be square root of x plus 2 times negative 1. That's my outside. My inside then is going to be square root of x plus 2. And then my last is going to be negative 1 times negative 1. Okay, so there's my FOIL, and it is always handy to do that. Now what I'm going to have to do is do the FOIL method there. So let's go ahead and do that down here in black. Or I guess we don't do the FOIL method. See, I'm getting myself confused. Alright, so back to reality here. Square root of x plus 2 times the square root of x plus 2. When you take the square root like that, you get that. We took this by itself. Remember, when you have a square here and a radical, they all go away. So that just becomes x plus 2. This here comes negative square root of x plus 2, because, see, this negative 1 times this makes this positive and negative. Same thing happens here, minus 1 times the square root of x plus 2, but we don't have to show the 1. And then this is negative times negative is a positive. So let's see what we've got here. Move some stuff up here. This here's where my arm started getting in the way. My elbow did when I was trying to draw that, so ignore all that. Alright, so we've got these two and this one that I can put together. X plus 2 plus 1. So that gives me an x plus 3. So get rid of that, get rid of that. A negative x plus 2 plus a negative, so it's like a negative 1, x plus 2, negative 1, gives me a negative 2, x plus 2. And at that point I'm done. I cannot combine this with this because this 2 is part of this whole thing. And since there's not a radical here, I can't combine these. So that is it. And I'm going to shut this off and we'll do 9.5b, for example, 7, 8, and 9, and we're going to skip 10.